Hey everybody, it's Mike Sherwood and welcome to my YouTube channel, Don't Waste Your Life, where we remind you to be present, to be happy, and to be thankful. If you're new to the channel, I ask that you subscribe below, and if you're returning, thanks for coming back. With this session, I'm going to go through my top 5 tips on how to learn a new skill quickly. In a globalized economy and things going faster than ever, it's more important to be able to learn new skills quickly, regardless of what you do. So in this video, I'm going to go through how I approach getting up to speed with new skills. So the first thing would be to leverage from areas of knowledge or transferable skills. So in this area, what I'm trying to communicate is that you have skills that you already know, and you can use these as anchor points or pools of knowledge to then be able to learn something new. You should be focusing from the areas that you already have awareness on. So for me, for example, I know Power BI is a visualization tool. I know it very well. I have a new use case that I'm working through at work that I can't use Power BI because it does not have as good of mapping capabilities. So I'm exploring what I can do with Tableau. Obviously, it's a new tool. I don't know it as well, so I need to find a way to get up to speed as quickly as possible. Considering they're both visualization tools, the good news is they tend to work similarly. So I'm going to break down how I approached doing this. So number one, I focused on the setup, which is basically importation of the data, the transformation of the data, and then the databasing or the relationships on how to organize the data. Number two, I focused on the testing and validation. I created something similar in the previous visualization tool. I created something new in the new visualization tool, and I cross-referenced the data to make sure everything matched, everything ties off. Because as you're learning something new, you want to be able to be sure you have a solid foundation. Number three, I would focus on having a peer review. I would have somebody else review it. They may not know this particular skill set. What I am looking for is for them to help dialogue and go through the process to see if there's any gaps in my knowledge that I might have. So the last one is the final frontier, and this is where the value is added. And if I've done everything correctly up to this point, I should have a very solid foundation. And this is where I might have to Google or I might have to experiment in order to get the answer that I'm looking for. In many cases, what I'm doing is I really have no idea what to expect. It's a lot of times just trial and error to figure things out. But because I had a solid foundation of items 1 through 3, this should go well. So this is what I mean by using different kind of knowledge pools or using transferable skills to relate to new things that you need to learn. Everybody has this advantage. Everybody can use this in their daily life to learn new stuff. So number two is finding somebody to learn from or a mentor. There is always somebody out there that knows more about a particular subject than you do. It's just a matter of finding somebody that knows just a little bit more than you for you to learn from them. I actually recommend that you look for somebody that is not an expert, somebody who knows this well but is not an expert, because experts tend to not remember the grind that they had to go through in order to acquire that knowledge. And in many cases, they have limitations on relatableness. When I'm looking for somebody, I'm looking for somebody who's curious, somebody who is patient and willing to show me the struggles that they had and help me learn. Practically, what I recommend doing is trying to find somebody on LinkedIn or in your personal network. When you do this and you set up time with somebody, come prepared with your questions. Don't waste their time. Be thankful and appreciative of the time that they're giving. So number three is be specific with what you're trying to accomplish. I would say that this is probably the most important thing that you need to do when you're learning a new skill, is to be very specific and detailed about what you're trying to accomplish. So I can give you a practical example here. In badminton, as many of you know, is a sport that I really enjoy. I wanted to improve my consistency. Without hours of training, that would be very hard, but there are some small tweaks I can do in order to improve my consistency. When I originally learned how to play badminton, I actually served using a forehand serve rather than a backhand serve. Most players use a backhand serve rather than a forehand serve. And if you're curious about what the differences are, if you're not a badminton player, there'll be a bit of video up here above. In order to get to the end goal of increasing consistency and knowing that doubles is primarily a serve and return and third shot game, I knew that this was something that I had to focus on and get better at, is that the serve I had to improve upon. So what I did is I took it upon myself to practice this day in and day out. At first, I was really bad at it. It was building muscle memory and learning new skills, and it was just something that was very challenging. But this is something that really helped improve the consistency of my game. Once I mastered it, I actually got very good at serving. So number 4 is to build a plan. If you're trying to accomplish something that's going to require multiple steps and require progression, I recommend building a plan and sharing that with somebody, a mentor, or even just putting it out there online, or even just you documenting it. It'll be very helpful to have a plan so that we can track to see how you're progressing over time. So here I'll give you a real example. As most of you know, I play doubles in badminton, and doubles is a very fast-paced game that requires a lot of quick movements and changes. Versus singles, it really requires more technical mastery, at least this is in my opinion, than doubles. So if you're curious about learning more about the types of shots that you can get in badminton, I'm gonna have the particular video that I'm talking about here. So I played doubles for badminton, which is primarily a very fast-paced game, very short rallies, and does not require as much technical mastery, in my opinion, as singles does. So recently I was taking training from Coach Hendry, and we were going through to try to find areas that I needed to focus on improving. And what we found is I need to focus on my backhand mid-court play and net kills. And if you're curious to understand and see what this is, I have a video up above. When we were going through this, he basically walked me through a bunch of training steps. And what I did, all this is from him. I took this down afterwards and I kind of broke it down to try to understand it. And this is really his plan, but I've documented his plan that you can use to get mastery in whatever you're trying to do. So here I'll show you the steps. So the first area was focusing on proper grip. So for a badminton racket, there are 2 grips that I'd be focusing on here, the forehand grip and the backhand grip. On the forehand side, I tend to be pretty good with that. But on the backhand side, I tend to forget to use my thumb in this example. So what I actually did was we just focused on the mechanics of just getting the shot down, where I could just focus on using the correct grip. The second one was focusing on the biomechanics of the swing without moving. So in this case, when I was doing it, I was just standing in a spot and I was just hitting the shuttle, hitting the shot, and he was focusing on the biomechanics. The reason why we're doing this is because for me, I add a bunch of extra stuff. I add in my shoulder and my arm, and that's not the correct biomechanics. And I add in a lot of strength by doing that. And the thing is when I'm doing this, it's just a popping motion of your arm. It's just your wrist twisting. So I was able to focus on that to start to build muscle memory. So the next one would be focusing on what I previously learned, using the correct biomechanics, addressing the shuttle at the correct height, and using the right amount of strength, meaning just using my wrist to provide power for it, and moving to the shuttle. So we're building new pathways by doing this, combining this with stuff I already knew. And I also found out that unfortunately my footwork was incorrect. So he helped tweak a little bit of my footwork by doing this. That was the next level of progression. So the next one we did was we focused on using those same biomechanics, but then what we did is we did backhand and forehand side while moving. So what this was testing is testing everything I've done and the grip change. So I was being able to change from backhand to forehand. So this was testing my new skills and building out what I already learned to try to build muscle memory. For the next one, we focused on the same biomechanics, doing forehand, backhand, but then he was doing it at random. And what this was practicing is being able to observe what is happening and be able to make a reaction quickly. When he was doing this before, where he was alternating back and forth, I knew what to expect. So in most cases, I was already changing the grip at a time or doing other stuff to prepare for that shot. By doing random, you can't do that. You can see that this can continue to progress. And I only will add one more step, but there could be many, many steps for this. And the great thing about this is you can revisit the steps to build competency and mastery. Because just because you passed one level doesn't mean you should not go back to the previous level to work at it. This is all foundational in this particular example, especially. So for the last one, what we would do is we would go back to doing forehand, backhand, alternating. So that way I know what's coming. But here's the twist. I'd be focusing on where I'd be hitting the shot. Would I come up and block the shot? Would I come up and push it? Would I come up and cross court the shot? I would be able to do that and think about that and think about the quality of the shot, because I know I'm just going to be alternating back and forth. So this could allow me to practice, to gain confidence in being able to place the shot, because it's one thing to be able to hit the shot. It's another thing to be able to hit it into open space or to be able to create an opportunity. So again, this is a great example of how a plan was built by Coach Henry. I did not build this, but this is a good example where you can see how having a plan can help you skill up very quickly. So the last one is understanding when enough is enough. The law of diminishing returns is not your friend. There are many skills that are out there that you can become an expert in, but I'm going to be honest, in the labor markets, it doesn't really pay to be an expert usually. Usually it pays to be more of a generalist that's able to acquire new skills quickly. And that's what I primarily focus on, both in work and in sports in my life. I focus on acquisition of new skills and becoming as competent as I can as a generalist. So I have one more example of this, and unfortunately it's also a badminton example. There is a particular shot that is very difficult to do in badminton. It's called the backhand, and it's predominantly used in singles. You'll see it in doubles as well. It's a very hard skill to master, especially if you're hitting it baseline to baseline. And if you're curious about what this backhand shot is, there's a video up above that can explain this in detail. But when you go to hit the backhand shot, we could build a plan like what we talked about in the previous step to be able to go towards mastery. But the time investment in order to do that is massive in order to become an expert in this shot. Because I play doubles, I've kind of shied away from doing this because it is a shot that is useful, but I don't use it as often. So unfortunately, I do have a weak backhand. But what I do instead is I know about this limitation. I work around that. So I use an overhead shot rather than using a backhand shot. So obviously this creates some weaknesses, but if I was going to invest my time into becoming more proficient, doing the backhand shot would not be where I'd be investing my time. I'd probably work on becoming a better server, work on my mid-court, work on other areas before I'd work on my backhand. If I had more time, I'd invest it there. But again, you need to know what makes sense, and sometimes enough is enough, and you don't need to go beyond that. So again, this was my top 5 tips on how to learn new skills fast. The most important thing though of all this is to be patient with yourself. Acquiring new skills takes time, effort, and patience. Just remember that Rome was not built in a day. Thanks, guys.